My name is Dana, and if you're listening to this, then congratulations. You've made it far enough in life to start wondering if the people around you are exactly who they say they are. I was 44 when everything in my life snapped in half like a dry twig. And even now, years later, I still wake up sometimes, reaching for a man I no longer love, in a house I no longer own, with a name I no longer use. I used to be someone else. Dana Kelly, wife of Dr. Jonathan Kelly, mother of two, PTA co-chair, queen of well-balanced casseroles and polite neighborhood smiles. I lived in one of those zip codes that people name drop when they're trying to prove they've made it. Brick driveway, curated hedges, local yoga studio, with matcha shots after class. You know the type. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you're one of the people who always looked at lives like mine and wondered what kind of rot was hiding underneath all that polish. You'd be right to wonder. Jonathan was a surgeon, brilliant, respected, polished to the point of being untouchable. He had the kind of voice that made people lean in, nod, and agree, even if they didn't understand a word he said. And I was the supportive wife who made it all look easy. I ran the home, managed the schedules, made sure the kids didn't melt down during holiday dinners. People used to tell me I was lucky, as if marrying a man who could control a room just by walking into it was some kind of golden ticket. But nobody ever asked me what it was like living with someone like that. Nobody ever really wanted to know. For 15 years I played my role. I learned how to disappear into his spotlight without dimming it, how to be agreeable, adaptable, presentable. He liked me best when I was quiet, which meant I got very good at pretending my thoughts didn't matter, or rather, that they were simply echoes of his. I'm not sure when I stopped being myself. Maybe it happened slowly, like a leak you don't notice until the ceiling caves in. Or maybe I gave pieces of myself away one compromise at a time until there was nothing left but a shell of a woman who smiled too much and apologized for things that weren't her fault. And then came Elise. She was the assistant administrator at the surgical center. Younger, thinner, blonde in that aggressive, high-maintenance way that screams monthly salon appointments and curated Instagram feeds. The kind of woman who refers to herself as a badass in team meetings and thinks it makes her interesting. I knew the type. Hell, I used to be threatened by the type, not anymore. I didn't find out about the affair in some dramatic way. No lipstick on the collar, no strange perfume wafting through his clothes. Jonathan was far too meticulous for that. No, what gave him away was his phone bill, one line item. A 2-hour call made at 1:17 a.m. while I was in our bed sleeping with his back turned to me like a barrier. I remember sitting at the kitchen counter, staring at the statement, trying to make the numbers make sense. Who talks for 2 hours in the middle of the night? I tried to tell myself it was work, a patient emergency, but I already knew. Deep down, I'd known for months. The late nights, the sudden showers when he came home, the way he looked through me instead of at me. I confronted him 2 days later. I wish I could say I screamed, cried, threw things. I did. I asked him very calmly who Elise was. He blinked at me like I'd spoken a language he didn't understand. Then he told me I was being paranoid. Hysterical. That classic line. You've always had trust issues, Dana. God, the number of times he used that phrase like it was some magic spell to erase my intuition. But I wasn't crazy, and I wasn't wrong. It took 3 weeks of sleuthing, late nights digging through old emails he thought he deleted, and one humiliating visit to the clinic where Elise worked. She recognized me immediately, tried to play it cool, called me Miss Kelly like we were in some Jane Austen adaptation instead of the real world where she was screwing my husband in his office between surgeries. I told no one at first, not even my sister. There's a kind of shame that comes with betrayal, a voice in your head that whispers, "You should have seen this coming," and I think part of me did. But knowing something and admitting it are not the same thing, especially when you've built your life around someone else's needs. The thing about betrayal is it changes you, not all at once. It starts small. You lose sleep, you stop caring about things you used to love, your thoughts get darker, and eventually you stop recognizing yourself in the mirror. But the real shit that comes when you stop asking why they did it, and start wondering what you're going to do about it. I wasn't looking for revenge. Not at first. I just wanted him to hurt the way I did, to sit with the discomfort of being unwanted, to know what it feels like to be lied to with a smile. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that a man like Jonathan couldn't be hurt by confrontation. He would twist it, turn himself into the victim, gather sympathy like currency. That's what narcissists do. They rewrite the narrative and cast you as unstable. So I made a different plan. I didn't confront him again. I didn't demand an apology or threaten divorce. I started paying attention, watching, tracking his routines, his ego, the way he lit up around certain people and shrank around others. I began to see patterns, weaknesses, places I could slip in unnoticed, and begin to rearrange the furniture of his precious little life. And I smiled. I smiled so much those days, even I started to believe I was fine. What he didn't realize, what none of them realized, was that I'd spent over a decade learning how to disappear, and now I was going to use that same skill to become invisible in all the right places, to set the stage for something he'd never see coming. The first thing I did was open a new checking account in a name I hadn't used in years. Dana Ashcroft, my maiden name. I hadn't written it on anything but Christmas cards in over a decade. It felt strange at first, like trying on clothes that no longer fit, but then it felt right, like reclaiming something I didn't know I'd lost. Then I started moving money, quietly, slowly, just small amounts from our joint account every week, $200 here, $150 there, under the pretense of grocery store trips or kids' expenses. He never noticed. Men like Jonathan never pay attention to the details, unless they're about themselves. Within 6 weeks, I had $8,000 in a private account. By the end of 3 months, I had more than double that. I began cataloging everything: his emails, his text messages, his calendar, the voice memos he sometimes recorded on his phone when he thought he had brilliant ideas late at night. I bought a burner phone and used it to take photos of anything incriminating. The burner stayed taped to the underside of the bathroom sink behind the panel. He never once found it. He never looked. During the day, I played the part of the perfect wife. PTA meetings, fundraisers. I even brought him lunch at work a few times, smiling at Elise like I didn't know she was fucking my husband. That was the hardest part, pretending. But I was good at it. Years of practice. He used to tell me I was so agreeable. I made sure to prove him right. What I didn't expect was how easy it was to gather allies. Turns out Elise wasn't very well liked among the other clinic staff. Too smug, too flirty, too obvious. One of the nurses, Rachel, pulled me aside in the parking lot one day and asked me real quiet if I knew about the thing going on between the doctor and the blonde. I told her I'd heard rumors but didn't want to believe them. She scoffed. "Honey," she said, "you better start believing." After that, it was like the floodgates opened. Rachel gave me names, dates, times. I started building a dossier. Every affair, every gift, every romantic text he thought he deleted from his phone. Elise wasn't the first, just the latest. There had been others: patients, interns, a pharmaceutical rep. I hadn't just been betrayed, I'd been played for years. There's something about knowing the truth that makes you see the past differently. Every cold night, every missed anniversary, every time he made me feel like I was too emotional, or irrational, or just plain wrong. It wasn't just neglect, it was control. He'd built our entire life on the assumption that I would never question him, that I'd always stay. But he was wrong. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected place: our accountant. Jonathan had always handled the taxes. I wasn't supposed to ask questions, but now I had questions. Lots of them. So I made an appointment with Carl, the accountant, and told him I needed some records for a refinancing project. He bought it, gave me copies of everything, and there it was: a secret account, offshore, opened 8 years ago, in Belize of all places. The balance? Nearly 300,000. I stared at the statement for a long time, not because of the money but because of what it meant. He'd been preparing for something, planning, maybe for a life without me, maybe just for a safety net in case I ever grew a spine. Too bad for him, I'd grown something else entirely. Here's the thing most people don't understand about revenge. It isn't about rage, it's about clarity, cold, precise calculation. It's about finding the wound, the soft spot under the armor, and pressing gently, persistently until it gives. And Jonathan's soft spot, his reputation. He was a man who curated every detail of his public life like it was a brand campaign. Family man, community leader, ethical surgeon. He sat on the board of 3 hospitals, volunteered for 2 charities, and did one damn TED Talk about medical accountability. So I decided to give him exactly what he feared the most: exposure. But not yet. First, I needed to disappear from the inside out. I started scaling back, quietly pulling out of committees, canceling lunch plans. I let my friends think I was going through something personal, burnout, midlife crisis. They understood, most of them were just barely holding it together themselves. That's the thing about our age, you learn how to hide your unraveling. Then came the night I set it all in motion. Jonathan came home late. Again, smelled like antiseptic and cologne. He kissed me on the cheek like I was a houseplant and went upstairs to shower. I sat at the kitchen table, listening to the water run, and opened my laptop. Email 1. Anonymous tip to the medical board. Email 2. Encrypted zip file sent to Rachel, who'd agreed to leak it to the hospital HR under the guise of anonymous concern. Email 3. A full report sent to the IRS, flagging offshore accounts tied to Jonathan Kelly's social security number. It took less than an hour to press send on everything. Years of silence, months of planning, dozens of careful moves, all leading up to 1 hour on a Thursday night in my kitchen while the man upstairs hummed in the shower and made plans for the weekend. And me, I slept better that night than I had in a decade. By Monday morning, the cracks had already started to show. Jonathan was pacing in the kitchen, cell phone pressed to his ear, voice low and clipped. I stirred my coffee like I wasn't listening, like I wasn't the reason his world was starting to catch fire. He ended the call and looked at me, forehead creased. Someone filed a complaint with the board, he said. I blinked at him, slow and innocent. What kind of complaint? Slander, he muttered. Someone's spreading rumors about me and Elise. I kept my voice even. What kind of rumors? He looked at me long and hard, like he was trying to see through my skin, but he still didn't suspect me. Not really. In his mind, I was still the quiet wife who stayed in her lane, who'd never have the backbone for something like this. By the end of the week, Elise was put on administrative leave pending an internal review. Jonathan came home in a fury. He threw his keys on the counter, slammed the fridge door shut, muttered to himself like a man unraveling. I asked if he wanted to talk about it. He told me to mind my own business, so I did. That Friday, I went to the courthouse, filed a petition for divorce under Dana Ashcroft, citing emotional abandonment and financial deception. My lawyer had everything ready. We'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. I walked out of that building, feeling like I could finally breathe. The next morning, I served him the papers over breakfast. He opened them, read the first paragraph, and laughed. "You're joking," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm done." He stared at me like I'd just torn off a mask and revealed someone he didn't recognize. In a way, I had. "You don't have anything," he said. "You'll walk away with nothing." I smiled. "We'll see." That same afternoon, the IRS froze his Belize account. A week later, the medical board launched a formal investigation. Anonymous sources had come forward with documentation, voicemails, screenshots, expense reports. One nurse testified that she'd walked in on Jonathan and Elise in a supply closet. Another had an email with a date and time that matched a surgical delay due to unspecified emergencies. I didn't give them everything, just enough to start the fire. The next month was chaos. He started calling me non-stop, first with anger, then with pleading. He left voicemails at 3 a.m. apologizing, rambling about how we could fix things, how I was being unfair and dramatic. I didn't respond, because I wasn't interested in fixing anything. This wasn't about salvaging a marriage. It was about closing a chapter I'd been trapped in for far too long, and making sure the person who locked me inside it knew exactly what it felt like to lose control. The kids were confused at first. I told them what they needed to know, that their father had been unfaithful, repeatedly, for years, that I'd stayed for their sake, but I wouldn't stay 1 minute longer now that they were grown. My son, he's 22, looked at me like I'd just sprouted wings. He said, "Mom, I didn't know you were this strong." And my daughter, she cried, not because of the divorce, but because she realized she'd spent her whole childhood thinking I was content, that maybe she hadn't been paying attention. "Don't blame yourself," I told her. I made sure nobody saw. That's the thing about women like me. We learn how to disappear in plain sight, and sometimes we get so good at it people forget we're even there, until we decide to reappear just long enough to burn the whole damn place down. One morning, I got a call from Rachel. She was breathless. "He's suspended, effective immediately, pending full investigation." I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just closed my eyes and whispered, "Good." He tried to fight it, of course. Hired new lawyers, spun some PR story about workplace misunderstandings and disgruntled staff. But the damage was done, and reputations, once cracked, don't shine the same way ever again. I moved out of the house before the court ordered it, left the furniture, the dishes, even my wedding dress in the attic, let him sit in the echo of everything I once built for him. He didn't deserve a clean slate. He deserved to live in a haunted house. And me, I found a little apartment above a bookstore downtown. Nothing fancy, no marble countertops or designer lighting, but it was mine, the first space I'd occupied in years that didn't have his shadow in every corner. People talk a lot about closure, about forgiveness, but they never mention the satisfaction of watching someone who underestimated you finally realize just how wrong they were. Jonathan lost his position on the board. Elise disappeared from the clinic's directory. Our mutual friends started whispering behind their hands, unsure which side to take. And I didn't care. For once in my life, I didn't need anyone's approval, just my own. Some nights I still think about him, not with longing, with study, like an old photo you hold up to the light trying to remember why you ever thought it was beautiful. I wonder if he ever thinks of me. I doubt it. Men like him rewrite history. He probably tells people I lost my mind, that I became bitter after the kids left, that he did his best but I just couldn't be saved. Let him believe that. Let him sit in the story he told himself. I know the truth, and I carry it with me every day, like armor. He made me disappear, so I made sure he'd never be seen the same way again. 3 months after I left, the divorce was finalized. Clean on paper, messy underneath. He got the house, the car, the country club membership. I let him have it all. Not because I was feeling generous, but because I already took the one thing he actually cared about: control. I watched him from a distance for a while, not in the stalker sense. I wasn't hiding behind bushes or tracking his location, but I knew people, mutual acquaintances, women from my old yoga class, people who still followed him on social media and were more than happy to forward me screenshots when he started rebranding himself as a victim. He began posting long, thoughtful captions about personal growth, about starting over after betrayal, about how trust is fragile and hearts are easily broken. He even quoted Rumi once. Rumi, from a man who once told me therapy was for people who couldn't handle real life. I kept every post, not for leverage, for perspective. A scrapbook of a man rewriting history in real time. Meanwhile, the IRS had started digging deeper into his finances. Turns out the Belize account wasn't his only secret. There were irregularities in some of his charitable donations, discrepancies in travel reimbursements filed with the surgical board. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to keep him under review indefinitely. He tried to call me again, once. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent him an email with a single sentence. "You were never as careful as you thought." He never responded. Elise vanished from his life as quickly as she appeared. Word got around that she moved out of state. Some whispered it was because of the scandal. Others said she got a job at another clinic. I didn't care. She was a symptom, not the disease. Replacing her wouldn't fix the rot. By then, I'd started working part-time at the bookstore below my apartment, just shelving books and ringing up customers. Nothing fancy, but it felt good, clean, like I was touching the world again after years of living in a sealed glass box. Sometimes customers would come in and recognize me. They'd glance twice, like trying to match the face to an old memory. A woman from the PTA, a neighbor who used to ask me about hedge trimming, once, even the wife of another surgeon. She looked around the store, leaned in close and whispered, "Are the rumors true?" I smiled. "Which ones?" She laughed nervously. "That you took him down." I didn't answer, just rang up her purchase and handed her the receipt. But as she walked away, I saw the look on her face. Not judgment, not pity, admiration. It was the first time in years another woman looked at me and saw strength instead of scandal. I joined a writing group, started journaling, then writing short pieces. Nothing too personal at first, but over time, the stories started sounding a lot like mine. Women who lost themselves, women who fought back, women who stopped apologizing. They read them aloud sometimes, said my voice sounded familiar, like their sister, their friend, the version of themselves they were too afraid to become. I didn't correct them. It's funny how much space grief can take up when you let it, but when you cut it out, when you stop feeding it stories and sympathy, you realize there's room for other things: peace, curiosity, even joy. 6 months after the final court date, I received a package in the mail, no return address. Inside was a framed photo of Jonathan and me on our wedding day, smiling. blissfully unaware of the hurricane we'd walk into. I took one look at it and walked straight to the dumpster behind my building, dropped it in without hesitation. Closure doesn't come in packages. It comes when you stop looking for a version of your story that makes everyone else comfortable. It comes when you stop needing to explain. Some nights I sit by the window of my apartment and listen to the city breathe. Cars, voices, wind curling through fire escapes. Life goes on. People fall in love. People lie. People leave. And women like me, we learn how to burn bridges not out of spite, but to light the way forward. I don't know where Jonathan is now. I don't care. He took years from me, but I took back the ending. He thought I'd stay quiet. I didn't. He thought I'd break. I rebuilt. He thought I was soft, but I was fire in disguise. A year passed, quietly, not in the way people mean when they say everything settled down, because it didn't. The noise just changed shape, but I learned to live with it. I learned that silence isn't peace unless you've made peace with yourself. One afternoon, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years. Melissa Hart. We'd been close once. School drop-offs, potlucks, matching Lululemon leggings. She looked different, softer, older, a little tired, the way we all get when life stops pretending to be fair. She hugged me like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to. "You look good," she said, scanning my face like I was a ghost that had come back wearing someone else's skin. "Thanks," I said. "I feel good." We had coffee at the cafe down the street. She asked me how I was holding up, if I missed it, the old life, the neighborhood, the routine. I told her the truth. No, I miss who I thought I was, but not who I really had to be to survive it. She nodded, stirred her latte like she was trying to mix in something unspeakable. "I heard he's dating someone new." I raised an eyebrow. "Already?" Melissa shrugged. "Apparently she works in finance. Younger. You know, the type." I laughed. "A real one." "He always had a type. He still tells people you lost your mind," she said softly. "Not out of cruelty but out of warning. Says you fabricated everything, that he's the real victim." "Of course he does." She looked uncomfortable, like maybe she expected me to defend myself. I didn't. Let him tell his story. Let him paint himself as the noble man who endured the storm. Let him gather sympathy, like cheap coins tossed into a wishing well. None of it changes what happened. People like Jonathan rely on the world never seeing past the surface, on charm and credentials to wash away the cracks. But I had pulled back the curtain, and once you do that, there's no going back. He'll spend the rest of his life patching holes in his image, wondering when the next leak will spring. That's the thing about lies. They don't rot from the outside, they decay from the core. As for me, I started over. Not in the dramatic way people imagine. No grand reinvention. No impulsive moves across the country or dramatic haircuts. Just small, deliberate choices. I bought second-hand furniture, took walks in the evenings, said yes to dinner when someone interesting asked. I even started teaching a community class on memoir writing. Every Tuesday night in a borrowed room at the library, 10 women and me, sitting in a circle with notebooks and pens and too much life inside of us to keep quiet. They tell their stories in pieces, halting at first, but over time the words come easier. One of them, Carol, wrote about escaping a marriage where silence was the most violent weapon. Another, Tasha, wrote about leaving a high-paying job after realizing she hadn't looked herself in the eye in 5 years. And every week we read, and we listen, and we remember that surviving is not the same thing as healing. One night, after class, Tasha stopped me on the sidewalk. "How did you do it?" she asked. I tilted my head. "Do what?" "Leave. Start over. Not turn bitter." I thought about it for a long time, looked out at the quiet street, the dim glow of shop windows, the wind slipping between parked cars like it had nowhere better to be. "I didn't turn bitter," I said. "I turned sharp. There's a difference. Bitter women stay in the fire and let it scorch them forever. Sharp women, we walk out with the flames still on our heels, and we use them to light the next chapter." She smiled. "I want to be like that." "You already are," I said. "You just haven't seen it yet." So here I am now, Dana Ashcroft, not the wife of Dr. Jonathan Kelly, not the silent partner in someone else's spotlight. Just me, woman, mother, survivor, writer. A woman who didn't just endure the fire but learned how to dance inside it. I know you might be listening to this because you're somewhere in the beginning. Maybe you've just discovered the lie. Maybe you're still deciding what to do. Maybe you're scared you'll lose everything if you speak, and maybe you will. But let me promise you this. What you gain when you finally choose yourself, it's worth every tear, every tremble, they never see it coming. But you'll never forget the moment you stopped being their story and became your own.